Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. It is now March 8th. It's about midnight, and I wanted to talk to you about something that happened 2 weeks ago, something that I want to follow up on. I was asked a question from overseas about an issue, and, I wasn't sure about my answer, so I decided to do some more research, to find out more, to make sure that I had the right opinion. And you will be amazed what I found, because it's not just a European issue, not just a United Kingdom issue, but it's happening here in the United States as well, and I think it needs to be talked about. But before we do that, I do want to say that if this is the first time that you're seeing our channel, I want to welcome you and thank you for being part of our audience. I want you to know that we do long-form political commentary, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, I always do a live stream with you to reach out and hear what you have to say about the issues that are affecting us all. From anywhere in the world, you can reach us through tweets and chats and messages and even phone calls to tell us what you think about the issues that are affecting us all, because we believe in the First Amendment. It's not just an American principle. You have the right to speak about the issues that matter to you, even if the internet overlords get pissed off, even if your country hates it. We want to hear your voice every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It was 2 weeks ago, it was February 23rd, that I was having a conversation. I was actually being interviewed by a United Kingdom channel that's alternative, and it was a great interview. We covered so much ground on issues affecting the United Kingdom, the European Union, and of course the United States, and getting a lot of feedback. But one of the questions that I was asked, as you can see on the screen right now, is I was asked about 15-minute cities. And based on the description, I hadn't heard of it before, but based on the description of what it was supposed to do, I refer to it as a ghetto. That it sounded like the ghettos created in Poland, the ghettos created during the World War II. Now you might say, Mike, that's pretty harsh. And yes, my reaction was very harsh, because the initial statement of what is a 15-minute city, and it's a development, a brand new redesign of cities, a sectioning off of areas so that any individual in one of those areas would not have to travel more than 15 minutes walking to be able to do all the things they want to do in their life. That's a pretty tight net. That's not a whole lot of range of movement. I decided to look it up, and you can see here, if you look up on Google, how far can a person walk in 15 minutes? We're talking about a range of about 1 mile. That's it. So they're talking about having communities, people living within 1 mile of their home, their stores, their work, everything in their life. That would mean movies, bars, dancing, theater, everything. Think about that. That's a lot of stuff in a very, very small region, a very small area. And we kind of found that to be odd. That didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to you. In addition, many of the cities that are taking this on are also redesigning the driving, the roadways in their cities, restricting people from being able to go to certain areas, and that is being reinforced by fines. Well, again, it sounds like you're trying to trap people into regions and that they're not allowed to get out of that they're being restricted. Their freedom is being taken away from them. By definition of the description, this sounds like the least open kind of idea that you could have. And I had to look into this more because it's bothering me. Because, yes, my initial reaction is to call it a ghetto, but is that right? Is that the proper thing to say about it? Is that snap decision the correct decision? I don't like making snap decisions. I like to look into things with detail. So we did. And I looked into it. Now, going chronologically, one of the first things that I could find about a 15-minute city, this is from Politico, is the promise of the 15-minute city, March of 2022. Now, Before I go further, and this is a political article, I want to be clear. This is a concept, an idea that was created by an individual. His name is Carlos Moreno, and he created this in conjunction with an organization called C40 Cities, which is working in conjunction, hand in hand, in a partnership with the WEF, the World Economic Forum. Now, the C4 Cities is, I want to be very clear, and we went to their website, we checked it out. C4 Cities is in partnership with several groups: the United Kingdom's government, the government of Germany, the government of Denmark, but there's a bunch of other companies as well, like the Clean Air Fund, which is a green movement company, Climate Works Foundation, a green movement company, Global Environment Facility, a green movement company. These are all climate change companies. Are you noticing a slight trend here? Of course, there's also IKEA, Hewlett Foundation, L'Oreal, Oak Foundation, another green climate change organization. Then there's the Open Society Foundations and Porticus. Now, these two caught my attention because I remember the Open Societies Foundation. Well, I've heard about them. They're George Soros. It is a George Soros founded, backed organization. They used to be called the Open Society Institute, which is why I remember the name. So we're talking about a very left-leaning organization. And the other one that caught my attention is called Porticus. Now, looking at Porticus, they have a family of founders. I really can't pronounce this. It's Brinkenmeyer, I believe is the name of the family. Very old family going back to the 1800s. They're involved in many different types of businesses and they have many different values. But I looked through, they're also connected to the European Union, the EU. In fact, one of the family members, and there are 500 family members in 12 different branches, but one of them is a member of the Court of Auditors. So I found that to be quite interesting. And in terms of the World Economic Forum, well, you can see here that in their discussion on net zero carbon future for cities, a directive on how to change cities across the world, in their list of partners, you will see that the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group is one of those organizations. So Carlos Moreno, on behalf of C40 cities, but also, and more directly, on behalf of the WEF, World Economic Forum, he was tasked with trying to figure out a way to adapt cities at the same time, this was in 2020, at the same time that the world was going through the pandemic and the lockdowns. And many of the nations, many cities, in looking at the pandemic, looking at lockdowns, took to this idea that he presented. And of course, overriding all of that is climate change. Because, of course, climate change is the most important issue facing mankind whatsoever. Doesn't matter if you believe in it or not, according to these organizations, we have to change the climate even though we don't know if we can. There is no scientific evidence of that. Every climatologist in the world has been wrong in every single prediction they have made since the 1960s. But we have to change the world because they say so. Okay, and we're going to be able to see the words here, but I don't want to get struck with the content for his TED Talk. But his key thing is we need to rethink cities around 4 guiding principles. His 4 principles are ecology. The very first thing is that the 15-minute cities, the 1-mile city, has to be climate change. It has to be climate friendly. It has to be a green city. That's his first thing. It has to be sustainable under the limits of climate change. Okay. He goes on to say, proximity. You have to do it within 1 mile. So it has to be climate friendly or climate change friendly, and it has to be a distance of 1 mile. something that anyone can walk within about 15 minutes. He wants to go on, besides the reduced distance. Third is solidarity, that people will be able to be around each other, to be able to be in a community together. This is a socialist concept, or is often referred to in a socialist framework. So solidarity is his third concept. And finally, participation. The community will work with each other within that 1 mile radius for all the needs of that community. Okay, so looking at that, the 15-minute cities concept doesn't sound that bad. No one's against having a clean environment if you can. That's fantastic. No one's against having good neighbors. There's nothing wrong with that. No one's upset about having a 15-minute walk to work, nor are they upset about the idea of being able to work with your neighbors on various community issues. That all sounds fantastic. But it makes me wonder. See, that's very positive. It's wonderful wish thinking. It's very pie in the sky, rainbows and ponies, candy for everyone. But how realistic is it? Well, again, let's go back to Politico. This is their article from March 31st of 2022. And in this, we're seeing that the article is in favor of this green energy movement, this climate change movement. And the entire article is written to explain why this is a good idea, that we should be doing this, that this is a benefit to the public, that it's being considered for Paris, a city with 1.3 million Parisians that commute every day, 2.2 million people in the city. It's been considered in Dublin, Barcelona, Milan, Lisbon. It hasn't actually been done in any of those cities. And even though the idea came out in 2020, and the mayor of Paris, Marianne Hidalgo, was running on that idea, but really no one's actually done it in these major cities yet. And you'll see that they will say, many see 15-minute cities as a roadmap to a new utopia, that this is a wonderful, beautiful, utopic idea. And in 2022, the way that this was being sold to the public via Politico was that they were looking to emulate the life in Testaccio, a district in the city of Rome. Mind you, it's not Rome itself, and this is what we're seeing in the major cities. It's not the city itself that they're trying to transform, but parts of the city, a district, a suburb, a section of those cities. And that's what Mr. Moreno was looking to do, to transform various cities to match an older style of this district called Testaccio, where people were able to have a butcher shop and a bar and a bank and a meat packing plant all within about 15 minutes. And all of the people in that area, working class people, all lived together, which sounds fantastic. Everything's in one spot. You can go to the school and you can go medical center and schools. And this article is saying you can do that again. You don't need a car. You can walk to the square. That's what he wants to replicate everywhere. Testaccio is it's a district, and the population of that entire area is about 6,500 people, 6,536 people. Now, that's not very large. I mean, we're talking about cities, most cities, 30, 40, 50,000 people. Major cities like Paris, you're talking 2.2 million people. New York City, 8 million people. With traffic through those cities, New York City has over 12 million people traveling through it on any given day, upwards of 20 million at certain times. So this really doesn't work on a large scale, much like solar energy may work well on one person's house, depending on where you live, or wind energy might work for one person, and depending on where you live. But to scale it up, it stops functioning. It doesn't work on a large scale. And so I'm getting this impression on 15-minute cities. It's very close. It's only about 12 minutes away driving from the center of Rome. It's even closer to the Colosseum. So then I look for another article. And then there's the article on November 25th of 2022. Pleso is a city in Poland. It is the first 15-minute city in Europe. Fantastic. So someone has actually done this. They actually made it happen. They went in and they took a city and they transformed it the way that the WEF, the way that George Soros, the way that Carlos Moreno was thinking of. They were able to actually make it happen. And of course, in the article, they're talking about this is going to be similar. Many other countries, many other cities are going to do this. Amsterdam, Paris, Vienna, Budapest, Rome, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Milan. They're all going to do this, except none of them have actually done it. It's not any of these actual cities. It is actually districts within those cities, which would make it sound more like a slum, more like a ghetto, more like a closed-off area. Because it's not the entire city that's doing that. But let's give them that. And going through, again, another very positive article talking about this, how this is going to be wonderful. This is going to be beneficial. This is something that everyone wants to have, which is all fine, except it's not dealing with any realities or any questions about it. And Pleso is a city that has 18,000 people. In fact, currently, it's 17,437 people in 2017. In this article from 2022, they have 18,000 people. So this is not only a small town, but it's also a small town that's not growing. There's no outside commerce. There's no draw to people to be part of that community. And the community is very, very small. As you can see, the majority of the entire town already fits within 15 minutes. In fact, in the article, they mention this is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This sixth paragraph, after the fold, about a page or so down, they do mention that while it's true that most parts of the town can already be reached by a short walk or a bike route, the town has worked hard to ensure the public transportation connections link important points easily. So, the success of this idea is based on an area that already has 1 mile distance. It's already a 1 mile, 15-minute city that already pre-existed. They just added a couple of bike lanes. That's not really convincing for someone. It makes me wonder. It's a red flag. So every article I'm seeing so far is telling me that this idea from the WEF, from C40, funded by George Soros in part, that these ideas, the only place it's been done is somewhere where it already existed. That doesn't make me feel like it's actually a functional idea. Everyone's telling me in all these articles that we keep seeing, and I'll show you even more, they keep saying, it's a great idea, it's fantastic, it will be beautiful, it will work. Well, I've been hearing those kind of arguments about solar, about wind, about ethanol for decades, but none of them are real. We've been promised that green energy will be perfect, that climate change, if we follow the programs, it'll be perfect for everyone, except none of that seems to come true. We were also told that if we got the jab, that we would be perfectly immune, that the pandemic would not affect us in any way, shape, or form, that we could not transmit it, we wouldn't die, we wouldn't get ill, we wouldn't get a lot of promises. But we've been overpromised a lot lately, especially since 2020. And the performance hasn't matched that. So then I kept looking around for more articles to find out, well, what else is there? Where is the argument that convinces me that this works? So there's the New European, an article in their paper, Paris, the 15-minute city. The French Colombian professor wants to rewire our metropolitan areas, and the City of Lights is first. Well, obviously they're not, because this article is from February 9th of 2023, this year. And we already know that it's been done in Poland, except it wasn't really done in Poland. So now they're trying to say, well, Paris is going to be the first one, and it's going to be fantastic, and this is going to answer everyone's problem. That you're going to have smart cities, they're going to be smart cities, they're going to be green cities, and everyone's going to live better, and you have to do it because of climate change. Climate change is the problem. Another recurring theme in all of the arguments about 15-minute cities. We have to do this because of climate change. We have to do it because green. We have to make the world green. And it's going to be good for you, and you're going to enjoy it. You know, that doesn't really convince me, especially when I read. And again, they buried this part in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 paragraphs in. Quote, this widespread acceptance of his concept is why Moreno is so busy. Quote, in April 2020, the C40 contacted me to start intensively examining how we could use the 15-minute concept to develop a new roadmap to recovery. He says, quote, the C40 cities consider that regardless of size, density, or geography, the implementation of a 15-minute city offers an adaptive way for creating more green and thriving cities. The most important point is not that you can reach more services in 15 minutes, but that you develop a polycentric city designed to improve the quality of life. The challenge is to avoid creating a city made up of a collection of isolated island neighborhoods. So he points out one of the problems. Let's think about that. Regardless of geography, regardless of size and density. So he's saying you could do this in New York City, you could do this in LA, you could do it in Chicago, you could do it in London, you can do it in, everywhere, Berlin. Except you really can't, partially because of the geography. Unless you have cities that are completely flat and very straight lines, you're not going to be able to do that. That doesn't work in California. That doesn't work in LA. It doesn't work for San Francisco. It doesn't work for a lot of cities, like Illinois and Chicago, where you're right up against the Great Lakes. You can't go into the Great Lakes to redesign some of the city sections. So geography is a big factor. You can't necessarily walk 15 minutes, especially with the hills that may exist in certain cities, valleys that may exist, waterways that you have to consider. There's a lot to that. And the density, that's also important. They're saying they can do this anywhere. It will work everywhere. New York City has 8 million people that live there every day. There are literally apartment buildings with over 40,000 people in an apartment building. You have smaller apartment buildings with thousands of people in them. And you're telling me that this idea that works for a village that's exactly 1 mile big is going to work in a city where if you draw a 1 mile circle around any part of New York City, you're looking at something upwards of 1.5 million people? Or you're going to do it in California, in LA, where you're going to have everyone is widespread. It doesn't seem to work the same. It doesn't make sense. It's not universal. So I have another question here. I have another problem. And again, I'm noticing every article is saying it will be perfect. It will be great. It's going to solve all the problems. They keep saying that, but they're not telling me, well, why is it going to be great? How is it going to work? They're not even addressing any of the downsides. Let's continue. Take another look. So I looked at another article, and this is from Politico again. Don't lock me in my neighborhood. 15-minute city hysteria sweeps the UK. So now we start hearing the pushback. First, they told us it was a great idea. It's fantastic. You're going to love it. Then they're saying if you have any questions about it, if you dispute it, well, you have a problem. Now, they're speaking specifically about Oxford in England, in the United Kingdom. And, quote, the academic behind the hit urban planning concept, again, it's a concept, it's not proven, slammed flat earthers spreading fake news about viable, livable cities. So now they're not just saying you can't ask a question or you can't have any doubts, but if you do, well, now you're a flat earther. You're being insulted. Your character is being impugned. You are being denounced. You're not a thinking person if you disagree and if you have questions. That doesn't make me feel more confident in what they're trying to sell in this article from March 1st of 2023. And it's interesting about this article because if you go through, and this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ninth paragraph, you see. The issue even made its way to the House of Commons, where Tory MP Nick Fletcher described 15-minute cities as international socialist concept whose ultimate purpose was to take away personal freedoms. Well, we've already established that George Soros, who's recognized as a socialist, the WEF has many, many, many social programs. They're involved in this. So socialists are behind promoting this concept. Going on. Although these alarmist claims of mass surveillance, this is Politico saying that if you have a question, you're an alarmist. That you have a question about the motivations of this, well, you're an alarmist. You are the problem. They go on to say, these alarmist claims of mass surveillance and loss of individual freedom are indeed far-fetched. The anxiety and unrest unleashed in Oxford fits into a broader picture of local pushback across Europe against green measures that are perceived as an attack on personal freedoms, particularly when they affect personal car use. So people are upset that this may interfere with their ability to travel, to be able to go wherever they want to go. That seems to be a very legitimate concern, and we will get to those concerns in just a moment. Going on in the article, they say, in Brussels, the rollout of new mobility plans aimed at curbing car traffic prompted riots in several neighborhoods, tapping into deep-rooted frustrations over marginalization and fears of gentrification. In Paris, Mayor Anne Hidalgo's expansion of cycling infrastructure during the pandemic has also been met with strong opposition. That's interesting. This happens to be, as you can see, Carlos Moreno. When someone's questioning him, he is calling them a flat earther. He says, the 15-minute city's chief architect didn't mince his words on the fallout, telling Politico in an interview, the pushback is emblematic of, quote, the levels of insanity we reached in this world. It is insane to question his ideas. He goes on to say, this kind of fear-mongering is, to me, something very fascist. It's fascist to mention your fears. Okay, going on. But it's also absurd that it shows that the people buying are terribly gullible, terribly ignorant, in line with flat earthers or those people who think the world is controlled by lizard people. So, and he goes on to say that it would be, quote, nonsensical to try to reason with people who don't want to listen to reason, but he also suggested that the protesters didn't appear to understand the actual measures being implemented. So, according to Carlos Moreno, if you have questions, if you have fears and concerns, you are a troglodyte. You believe that lizard people exist, that the earth is flat, you have no intelligence, you have no ability to comprehend, and he thinks you're not worth talking to. You are the problem because he has the solution and he's right. Because he said so. Because the WEF said so. Because George Soros said so. And you have to obey. And there goes one of my big problems. He is saying, obey. Don't question. Don't doubt. Just do. Do what we have told you to do. This will be where you're going to live. I have a problem with that. And this is going by his words as quoted by Politico. He doesn't like it. If you're asking a question, you're fear-mongering and you're a fascist, according to Carlos Moreno. That's what he said on March 1st of 2023. That's not a winning argument. That's not even close to a winning argument. In fact, that's dodging the argument. In fact, if we look at even more articles about this, if we go to the AP, Associated Press, and their article on March 2nd of 2023, a day after the article in Politico, the next day, Associated Press had their chance at saying that conspiracies misconstrue the 15-minute city idea. Okay, so again, in this article, you're seeing that they're saying that people who disagree, well, you just don't understand. Their claim, 15-minute cities are designed to restrict people's movements, increase government surveillance, and infringe on other individual rights. I'm going to be coming back to this. But that's one of the claims, one of the fears that people have. So according to the Associated Press, the urban planning concept, again, it's a concept, it's not a proven fact, is simply about building more compact, walkable communities where people are less reliant on cars. That's not addressing the concern. The concern is what governments might do to abuse the fact that people are restricted in a smaller community. It doesn't address the fact that the government will be watching individuals about what they're doing in these communities. They're talking about two different things. So they're not answering the concern or addressing what people are worried about. In fact, we have seen in many of the cities, directly at the same time that they're trying to put together this 15-minute, 1-mile concept, well, at the same time, we're seeing communities like Oxford City Council where they're also implementing restrictions on driving. Now, they will tell you in many of these cities, well, the changes to the road and the restrictions on traffic, that's separate. It had nothing to do with it, although it works perfectly in line and is a feature of the 15-minute, 1-mile concept. And in fact, according to what Carlos Moreno said, it is essential to his 1-mile, 15-minute city concept that you would need to have bike paths and walk paths, but not cars. That they have to be restricted. They have to be removed to lower the carbon emissions. So it's part of the climate change initiative. So that's part and parcel, part of his 15-minute ideal. But we also find out that this is being done in the United States, that this is an idea that's being pushed in Cleveland. The alt-right, they see those things and they say, well, this is a problem. No, I'm saying it's a problem because of the abuses that may be built into this. But let's go further. Let me go further. This is an opinion piece, which is published in the Boston Globe. It was published on March 6, 2023. Pushback against the 15-minute city. It is worth pointing out that the vast majority of these critiques are fundamentally wrong and dangerous. If you have a critique, you are wrong and you are dangerous for questioning what the WEF, George Soros, and Carlos Moreno has said. You are at fault. You are a problem because you are in the way of climate change. Do you notice there's a consistency in these articles? It's great, and if you question it, you're a problem. Obey, obey, obey. Do you notice why people have a problem with the 15-minute city concept? Let's go on. And by the way, in the description will be links to every single one of these articles. You can read them for yourself, and you can read through everything that's being said there. But I find it interesting that the author of this opinion piece is Carlo Ratti, a professor of urban technologies at MIT's Department of Urban Studies and Planning. He's an advisor at the Global Risks Report. When you look at the Global Risks Report, what you will find is they are working in line with the World Economic Forum. So he has a bias already built in. The Boston Globe is publishing a biased opinion, an opinion that is denouncing and insulting anyone who has a question about this concept from the WEF, whom he is aligned with. That doesn't mean that he's wrong, but it does mean there's a question here, especially when he's using such strong language. I believe he said here, and he says here, quote, "It is worth pointing out that the vast majority of these critiques are wrong and even dangerous. They derive from legitimate grievances, but have been cultivated and disseminated by willful misinterpretations and purposeful deceptions. It's true that a series of autonomous enclaves would not add up to a real city. So it's not a real city. They admit that, something that the prior articles didn't admit. But that is not what the 15-minute city aspires to. We could even name it the 15-minute baseline to emphasize that such enclaves only aim to capture essentials, creating the flexibility and therefore more freedom to save our long commutes from the trips that count." Well, so it's more free to not have more mobility. It's more free to have everything in 1 mile, but not to have it in 2 miles or 5 miles, to take away your desire to go somewhere else. That seems very restrictive. It seems like a ghetto. It sounds like the logic that was used in the 1930s to describe ghettos. Everything you need is right there. You don't need to go anywhere else. We don't want you to go anywhere else. It seems like a ghetto. And they're not taking away that argument, especially when they admit this isn't a city plan, it is a district, a region plan. And when they admit that size and geography and density of the population are factors that have a significant impact on trying to implement this. They go on to say, "It is unlikely that rebranding or polemics will ever be enough to convince the detractors. After all, the culture war comes for everything, from gas stoves to M&Ms. Mayors, urban planners, and city enthusiasts simply don't have the tools to win." Well, wait a minute. M&Ms is part of the culture war. They went woke. M&Ms isn't something from the right. That was something that was done on the left to appease socialists, to appease the same people who believe in the climate change and woke policies. Gas stoves, again, that's a movement on the left. That's from the climate change groups. That's a woke policy. It has nothing to do with the right. And there are legitimate concerns and questions about that. They're saying, well, if you don't agree, you must be one of these cultural warriors. Maybe, maybe not. That doesn't address the underlying inherent problem. So I kept looking through. I looked at the best jobs in America, top 100 jobs. So this idea of 15-minute cities works best if you can work from home. So if you can be a software developer at home, you will be able to do fantastic. Except everyone can't be a software developer. Nurse practitioner, well, that would require hospitals. And you would have to put a hospital every mile for every community. But by the way, we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough doctors in the United States right now. We are short 1.8 million doctors and nurses and healthcare workers. And that number, that shortage, is expected to increase over time, not decrease. But assuming that we had enough doctors, if we had enough nurses, then, okay, you wouldn't just need to build a hospital every mile. Every mile, let's even call it 2 miles. Every 2 miles, you would need to build a new hospital for each and every one of those communities. That's a lot of doctors. That's a lot of nurses. Let's go on. Healthcare managers. Well, that goes with the doctors and nurses. Again, you need more hospitals. Physician's assistant goes with the hospitals, goes with nurses and doctors and the middle managers. By the way, who's paying for all these hospitals being bought? Where are these hospitals being placed? What buildings do you have to remove to put them in? Is that going to change the community? Is that something that's positive? That's a question. Information security analyst. Great job. Number 5 in America. One of the best jobs you could have. Except everyone can't do it. Yes, you can do it from home, but not everyone can. Physical therapist. That goes back to the hospitals. Financial manager. Great job. Not everyone can do it. Everyone can't be a financial manager. So limited pool of people who can do that. And you may or may not be able to do that from your home. IT manager. Again, a job that you might be able to do from your home, but not everyone can do it. Web developer. Great job. Not everyone can do it. Yes, you can do that one from your home. Dentist. Goes back to the hospitals. Lawyer. Fantastic. Great job. Not everyone can do it, and you can't do it from home. Veterinarian. Great job. Well, now you need hospitals and you need vet hospitals as well. Takes up more space. Physician, orthodontist, same thing with the hospitals. Market research analyst, not everyone can do it. Notice they're missing the middle managers. These are not middle jobs. Logistician, registered nurse, management analyst, occupational therapy, computer systems analyst, financial advisor. Do you notice these aren't middle-level jobs? These are high-end elite jobs. And these are the jobs that they want to target because many of these jobs can be done from home, at least in part. And they're perfect for the 1-mile city, the 15-minute city. But they don't work for anyone else. They don't work for people who have to manufacture anything, people who have to transport things. Think of it like this. And this is where some of my objections start coming up because I have many questions about this. So they're telling us it's going to be fantastic, but size makes a difference. Density makes a difference. Geography makes a difference. We have to build a new infrastructure. We have to build hospitals somehow. Who knows where that money is coming from, but we have to build the hospitals. We have to build green spaces. Where are we going to put them? Who knows? Where's the money coming from that? Who knows? We have to be able to have people all have to have jobs that are in that community. So you mean to tell me that not only hospitals, but we have to have car mechanics, we have to have movie theaters, we have to have bars, we have to have art galleries, movie theaters, we have to have office spaces in that 1 mile so that people don't have to travel downtown. They're just going to walk to work. Well, what if you don't want your office in the middle of some district in the city? What if you can't logistically do that? What if FedEx, is FedEx supposed to have a hub in every single one of these districts that make up a city? Let's think of it politically. Now we have all these separate regions, these isolated areas, isolated islands, essentially. And do they have different politics in each and every one of them? What if the needs of one area, say one area is more a bunch of financial analysts, and another area is more, artists. They have different needs. Do they get different politicians to take care of their needs to represent them? Because they have different goals. They have different desires. That makes a problem for the politics as well. So I have some concerns about this. It's not just who is behind this, George Soros, who is questionable in his character at the very least, the WEF, who are questionable in their character at the least, and organizations that work under that umbrella. But we're also doing this under the umbrella of climate change, which is questionable as well. Again, you can look this up for yourself. I've talked about this on this channel before. There has never been a prediction made by climatologists that has ever come true, ever. Since 1960, it's been 50 years. They have never got it right. Not one prediction. Not ever. And yet we're supposed to change the world because they think maybe we could change the temperature of the world, even though the world constantly changes. The planet Earth has had 27 global heat waves and global ice ages. And we, human beings, are supposed to change that. We're going to change the way the world operates. That's a bit of hubris. But assuming that we can change the climate, okay, and assuming that we can, regardless of size, regardless of density, regardless of geography, you're in the mountains, you're in a valley, you're in hills, regardless of all that, that they can make this happen. And the money, where is the money coming from? Who's paying for all of this? Who's paying to build the hospital and a movie theater and a car garage for mechanics? Who's going to build the veterinarian hospital? Who's going to build the office space? Who's building all of that? Who's going to build the green space? Who's paying for all of that? And who's going to be moving into those areas? Because that's a lot of money. So those rents would be rather high. Who's going to pay the rent for these wonderful, modern, new applications? This isn't something that's going to be cheap. Will someone who's working as the fry guy at McDonald's, will they be able to afford these apartments to live in that community? I think not. We haven't even gotten into the infrastructure, talking about reworking water pipes, redoing electric lines, redoing having facilities to collect solar, to collect wind, to have batteries, to maintain that, to have a new electric grid. We're not even talking about the cost of those things. We're just talking about the buildings themselves. And now you have to convince businesses that they want to be there. And at the same time, you're rerouting all of the traffic so that people cannot easily travel from that 15-minute city to somewhere else. You're making it more difficult for them. So you may say they are free to go wherever they want, but you have functionally stopped them from doing so. You've made it harder. You've put barricades in their way to live the life they want to live, to travel where they want to travel. You have disincentivized them from being able to express themselves by mobility. That's assuming that governments are always good. And we know full well, everyone knows, that's not the truth. Governments aren't very honest and aren't always upfront. Just look at what we are seeing in the lockdown files that are coming from Matt Hancock at the top of the United Kingdom's government. That they knew that many of the actions that they were taking, in particular with the lockdowns, were not in the best interest of children or the public. And we've seen similar things here in the United States. Dr. Fauci, who has been now shown very often to have lied to the public and to the government about some of the activities he was doing, what he was funding, and what actually was happening, gain of function. So governments aren't always in the best interest of the people. And the more corrupt a government may become, the more likely they're going to oppress their people, which is what we have seen. Again, 1930s, 1940s Germany is a great example of that. Poland is a great example of that. We're talking about slums. We're talking about ghettos. So I'm back to my original stance from February that, I don't like this idea. I see this as being restrictive. Whether it's intentional or not, it is functionally, realistically, going to be restrictive on freedom. And then there's the question of society. You have little cliques that are not interrelated, that are not interacting with each other. Yes, everyone in that 1 mile will be able to interact with each other, but they're not interacting with people 2 miles away, 5 miles away, 15 miles away. They're only interacting with the people in their community. So again, socially, it isn't advantageous. It's restrictive. It is a ghetto. I'm looking at this from many different directions, and I've looked at the articles from many different directions to try and make sure that my initial outlook is correct. The focus of this is not on the people. It's on climate change. It's on a political agenda. And people are not the primary purpose. The agenda is. The political goal is, which is climate change. That is first and foremost what they're looking to do. And by doing that, they are changing the way people live their lives, which is a manipulation of their freedom and a restriction on their freedom. That works out to a ghetto We see article after article after article promising us that it's going to be fantastic. There's always a bright idea. There's always a wonderful promise. The reality is rarely anything even close. And this would have to, for this to be the utopia they seem to claim it would have to be perfect. I've done homework. I've left the links in the description for you to see. I do not trust this. I do not trust the World Economic Forum to start with. I don't trust George Soros to start with. So that's already a problem. I don't trust the example of success is somewhere that was already just 1 mile. It was a city that was already 15 minutes large. That's not proof of concept. I don't trust that every single article on this is either an affirmation of how great it is or a denouncement of anyone having any concern and any question about it. That's not how you convince people. That's how you railroad people. That's how you silence people. That is exactly the opposite of free speech. It is the exact opposite of being involved in your government and in your community. You're telling people to obey. Obey or you will be ostracized because we have a great idea because we say so. That's not a winning argument. I've tried to think it through. I tried to make this as short as I could. I hope it made sense to you why I call 15-minute cities ghettos. That these are not in your best interest. It's a wonderful concept. It sounds beautiful. It has problems, lots of problems. And the more you think about it, the more problems you will find. And they are not being addressed. You're being told to shut up. You're being told to obey. You're being told that you're a troglodyte for daring to even have a question. I'm sorry, Carlos Moreno, you may have a doctorate. You're not that smart. But maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you see a benefit in 15-minute cities. Maybe you think this will work in Ohio or in Oxford or in Paris. Maybe you think it's a fantastic idea. Tell me why. Tell me, assure me, show me the assurance that governments will not abuse this, because I'm not convinced. But this is what I think. What do you think? We're happy to hear that, and we hope you'll join us this Sunday and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to tell us your thoughts. And I thank you for putting up with my cold. Thank you.